Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 83. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture, with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the show, everyone who has liked, shared, and commented. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. I also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment has been providing uncompromising quality for over 40 years. Samson products are long-lasting and made of the highest quality equipment on the market. Each project is built from the ground up with the ability to customize every need. The team at Samson focuses on developing the highest quality relationships with their customers, in addition to providing them unparalleled quality in every piece of equipment bearing the Samson name. Learn more about Samson's professional weight room solutions and the Samson Standard at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code strength_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Jacob Behara. Jacob is a human performance data scientist at the U.S. Army. He has spent the previous 2 years serving in similar positions for Guardian Premier Solutions. He has transitioned into the tactical training space in 2019 after spending the start of the year as a performance specialist at EXOS. And his first full-time position was at Stetson University, where he was an assistant strength conditioning coach from 2014 to 2015, before working as a performance specialist at SPIRE Academy in Ohio from 2015 to 2016. He transitioned back to the college realm as an assistant strength coach at the University of Kansas from 2016 to 2017, before working with minor league baseball as a strength coach in the Houston Astros organization in 2017, followed by in the Kansas City Royals organization the following year. He has also been an intern strength coach at the University of South Alabama and his alma mater, Oklahoma State University. Behara continues to stay active in his spare time, training heavily, involved in lifting, and developing into a better athlete himself. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Jacob Behara. What's going on, everybody? Today I'm excited. We are joined by someone that we both met basically in our first full-time jobs way back in like 2014. So a long time ago. We've both had a lot of career changes. I know you just had one recently too. So I got Coach Jacob Behara on the show. What's going on today, man?
Not much, just a really rainy and awful Saturday here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So
Hey, well,
it's good.
Well, it's perfect then. We're gonna stay inside and we'll actually get talking about some stuff, catch up a little bit. Like I said, we've both went through a lot of career changes. Somehow I'm still stuck in college and you're in tactical setting, which is awesome. And I know we're gonna touch on that stuff a lot today, but really want to start with how you got involved in strength training. Like what was your kind of progression? What sports did you play growing up, and what do you kind of do nowadays to stay active and train?
Yeah, so I'll just start. When I was a kid, I played all sports when I was a kid: soccer, baseball, football, basketball, everything. And then when I got to high school, I got into baseball. Um, I wasn't good. I didn't even have a chance to play in college, and I stopped when I was about a junior. Because I was just working and my parents wanted me to get a job, and basically like all they did was kind of pay for the roof over my head. I had to pay for my clothes, my cell phone, my insurance, my car, everything like that. So really just kind of like pushed me in towards getting a job. And I did, and we can get into this later. I started college a little bit later than most people, but just working out a lot in my life, and then got into some kind of powerlifting training in college. And then now, well, actually, when I became a strength coach, I started to try to train more like as an athlete and not as a just a lifter. And it's kind of coming full circle because as I get older, I'm 30. I just turned 39 on March 31st. So now I'm going back to more of the bodybuilding stuff. But and then I also did some BJJ about a year back for about 6 months, and that's kind of I want to get back into it. It's just a saving up for a house is not conducive to paying $200 a month to go to BJJ. So that's kind of where I'm at and kind of what I do.
I hear you. No, that's great. That's it's cool to see you kind of dabble in a little bit of everything and like see what your inception was after you stopped playing team sports, like organized ones and started getting involved in strength sports. And it's cool to like build on all those experiences and be able to use them with the athletes and the different populations you've worked with too. Because I'm sure that's probably paid dividends now that you work in such a different kind of field than just traditional athletes. So like with your experience and all that stuff, I know we'll touch on like the inception of everything. Actually, let's start with that. Like what was kind of your first start like in the college like sector? What really got you involved in coaching first? Because I know it was interning a little bit at your alma mater, but what was kind of that progression like, and what really got you pushed towards that when you eventually went to college?
Yeah. So my bachelor's is in dietetics, so I have to tell this story because it kind of is my path. So my bachelor's is in dietetics and exercise. I have my DPD from Oklahoma State University, Oklahoma State. But yeah, so I was actually in my last year of my dietetics degree, and I was just like so over the clinical aspect of it. Walked into this. This wasn't a clinical class, but this cooking class that I was taking. Walked in and said, "I don't want to do this anymore." So I literally like went to my advisor and said, "Hey, I want to transition to be a strength coach." So I told her, finished my dietetics degree anyways, but got involved in more exercise science related classes, talked to my professors and said, "Hey, what do I need to do? I want to be a college strength coach. I love working out." And I think this is typical of why people become a college strength coach in the first place, or any kind of strength coach really. They're like, "Well, you got to use CSCS." So I literally studied all summer, got my CSCS. Then I had a friend that knew a strength coach at Oklahoma State. In Oklahoma State, on the Olympic side, doesn't have interns. Well, at least they didn't like 10 years ago. So I was in there bugging the crap out of them. And my mentor, Callie Williams, who was the director at South Alabama, is a huge mentor to me. And so I interned at Oklahoma State for about a year during my last semester of grad school, and then went to South Alabama, interned there, and then got my first job at Stetson University, which is where we met. You were at Loyola, and we kind of fell off after that. Maybe we didn't talk very long, and then we just kind of caught back up again. But yeah, I did that, and then I've just been everywhere. I've been in the private sector. I've been in pro sports in pro baseball, and then now I'm I'm a data scientist in the military. But that's kind of where I've gone and kind of what got me into it. I always loved working with athletes, but towards the end of about 3.5 years ago, towards the end of my coaching career, I decided that I don't want to be on the floor anymore, and I was tired of making 30 to 40K a year, and so transitioned to another job and never looked back.
No, that's cool to see though, like when you found out like exactly what you wanted to do, like whether it be in college from dietetics, like, and then you go, right, I was like, I want to be a college strength coach. And then you found probably before you really burned yourself out and you just got stuck in a career. You're like, no, I want to make a wholesale change. Like I'll be damned if I'm just going to stay in something that I'm not passionate about. And then you make the switch. Was there anything else that like really, like, I know you talked about like, obviously, like we all know the finances, like that side of it, like the monetary side of coaching and just being on the floor is grueling and everything. Was there anything else that really drew you to like the data science side and like that side of training that you kind of find yourself in now?
Yeah, so when I was with the Stros, we did a lot of sports science stuff, HRV, force plates, boards, everything you can think of. we were doing. I was interested in it and really didn't think about it. I mean, I was a strength coach, so I was like more interested in programming and periodization and training my guys. And really the reason I got my last job is I just knew somebody that told him to call me. I didn't even apply for the job and got it. They said, "Hey, you want to do sports science with the military, with the Air Force?" And it wasn't really a sports science job, really, but that still kind of got me into the tech side. And then, that's kind of what I didn't really get pushed into it. It was kind of just fell in my lap. But I honestly loved it, and I started like diving in because I had a couple of people that I worked with one of my friends, Jill, is now the sports scientist for the Detroit Lions, but she was with us at my last company, and she kind of like gave me some passion. And my buddy Miguel Vidal, I want to be name dropping, but these two people have made big impacts on me. Now is the sports scientist for the women's national team. So, or the director of data science for the women's national team. So, those people kind of like gave me inspiration to move on to data science, and that's kind of where I'm at today.
No, it's fine. Name drop all you want because obviously those people are pretty important, obviously in your career path and where you found yourself now. So those mentors or those colleagues are super beneficial, and they're super vital to probably where you find yourself now. I know it's probably super unique because you've been in the college, you've been in the private sector, you've been in majors. Now you find yourself in the tactical setting as like coaching those teams, like regardless of like obviously institution, team to team is going to be different. Was there anything that sparked you jumping from college to jumping to the majors, jumping to kind of tactical setting originally as a coach? And now kind of looking back, probably talking to other people that are data scientists and do the sports science. Is there anything that really stands out between those different realms when it comes to coaching and then when it comes to sports science?
Yeah. So, I wasn't really drawn to anything. I mean, like I think when we're college trained coaches, especially at like a low level D1 school, we want to always move up. And that's me. Like I'm always trying to like I'm taking the best job for me. And so like got a job with the Astros, which was the best thing, one of the best things that ever happened to me. I was in the minors, so not I don't want to correct you, but not in the majors, just so everybody's aware. I was in the minor leagues. And then can you repeat the question one more time? That's kind of a lot for me to remember.
Yeah, it was a lot too. I know. No, like talking about just the differences between those four different places. Like they're four different realms. So like thinking about it coaching wise, you kind of answered it already though, because you said it exactly. Like you took the best job for you. So I guess the best way to like rephrase it, like now being like 3+ years doing data science, doing some of the sports science side, how does the tactical side do it a little bit different maybe than when you're first started getting involved with the Astros and the sports science side? Like what are you kind of doing now that's different than maybe you were doing in baseball and maybe what college coaches are doing for data science?
Well, first of all, I forgot to give my disclaimer real quick. So my views are not. I work for the United States Army. My views are not of the United States Army. So just to get out there, but so I can get into the tactical stuff. So pro sports is way farther along than anything than any college or tactical setting that I've been a part of. So which is sometimes a good thing, especially working with the Air Force. There was a lot of stuff where we were just like using a ton of different technology. And it was like almost paralysis by analysis. There's so much data. And I think the Army is doing a lot better job working with data. So we're trying to figure out, hey, starting with the simple stuff and then working into kind of the cool technology, force plates, wearables, stuff like that. But that's kind of the big difference that I've seen is that we're kind of taking a slower approach in the military, which the military is always behind everybody. We're never like the leaders generally. But that's kind of the differences I would say. And then I never did any sports science in college, so I can't really say a lot about that. But pro sports, there's less bureaucracy than there is in the military. Like you could have the best idea in the world in the military, and somebody that maybe had a and you have like a cool piece of tech that you want to use, somebody that had a bad experience with it, that's in the leadership position, can shut it down immediately. Which is, it hasn't happened to me yet, but it's definitely something that can happen. But yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I can attest to how slow some of that stuff works. There's so many different people it has to go through. It has to go through a full chain of command. It has to go through all these different test subjects. It has to be vetted. It has to be there. There's too many things to even name, like how that process works down and how it finally gets to the person that's actually going to have their hands on it, like you, that's actually going to have the equipment. You could put in whatever you want and try to get this piece because it works a specific way, and they're always going to have a different say in the matter. But I think that as much as I know on the college side, I've had my hands on different sports science equipment. Like I'm deemed the sports science head at like my university right now. And I know we get stuff and we do things way too soon. We have money and we just want to throw it at something that's kind of tangible and then see what sticks. And a lot of times I've seen at multiple schools and talked to multiple people, hey, they're like, oh, well, our coach wants sports science. Like we're going to get GPS. And they're like, why? And then you go back and you talk to them 2 years later and it's got dust on it, or they've sold it for a different unit. Yeah. And at least like you guys are doing it the right way, it seems, and you're trying to implement it slow. So maybe those barriers are actually doing you guys a service for once. So right now, you can get into it as much as you're allowed to, or what specifically are you going to try to look for when it comes to like data analytics with some of the soldiers, or what are your kind of first steps at actually implementing some of this stuff? Maybe that trickle down to the sport coaches you work with, or maybe just specifically to whoever you're going to provide this information to.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's hard for me to talk about a lot of that stuff, but I would say we're doing the basics, like real basics right now. We're doing like bean counting stuff. And I don't want to get into what we're doing, but like tracking, like encounters, through all the different realms. So I don't want to, and again, I'm kind of probably speaking too much about it in the first place, but my big interest is honestly sleep wearables. That is something that's kind of like really stuck with me the past 4 years. I've really kind of dived into the sleep stuff, sleep education, sleep research, and really, because I've understood that is like one of the biggest game changers you can possibly do is get sleep. If not the biggest game changer you can possibly do, is optimizing your sleep. Because if you do that, you're going to see a ton of different benefits, whether that be reaction time, memory retention, creativity, emotional control. All this stuff is going to make you better at what you're doing. So sleep is very interesting to me, and using the wearables to look at, obviously looking at soldiers and saying, hey, like we know there's a sleep problem in the military. Like we know there is, and you can go with looking at PTSD. You could look at people self-medicating with alcohol, the huge use of caffeine. So we know, and these guys aren't lasting that long in the military. Like a lot of people are getting out, the military struggling. They need to get more people in. But my goal in particular is to work with my population and help them understand why sleep is important. And so they can take that and then hopefully see a longer career where we get a win-win. They have better health outcomes. They have a longer career. They can retire and get their pension, et cetera. And then the military can also see the benefit of being able to not keep retaining these soldiers, and then also, getting people in, hopefully at the ground level, and teaching them this stuff so we can help them, again, let's have a longer career, just kind of make it in a cycle where like teach people, because we know that when people come in the military, you look back 5 years ago, sleep was for the weak. And now it's changed completely. Like now we're like, oh man, we know sleep is important. Now we have to go look at it. So that's something I'm really, and then like where I'm at right now, we don't have a lot of tech, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I know you can't talk about a lot of stuff, so I'm not going to try to pry into those things. Obviously, those are those are restricted, and it's important that you kind of keep that behind closed doors, especially working with tactical athletes. It'd be one thing if you're working with college or professional, like that stuff's out in the open. This is kind of close knit things that needs to remain that way. So no, I completely understand. For anybody that's really kind of interested in like getting involved, maybe in the tactical profession as like a coach, or more specifically, kind of what you do, like in broad strokes, like with other people maybe that you've talked, data scientists that are involved, maybe not at your unit, but have been colleagues of yours. Like, what do you kind of do on a day-to-day basis without getting into like those details? So anybody that is interested in maybe kind of making the switch from strength coach can kind of see what the data scientist side, the human performance side looks like from a different point of view.
Yeah, so I don't work at a normal unit. Um, I'm more of like a bigger picture type of person. That you guys, I'm sure people can kind of glean what I mean by that. But um, yeah. So what I don't normally do on a day to day basis is look at. I do a lot of visualization stuff, but I'm also looking at data, and sometimes it's boring. Where I'm really good at like breaking apart problems and seeing where the issues lie. So that's kind of where I'm at with looking at data, cleaning data, manipulating it, being able to visualize it to show to leadership, and that can be super simple visualization. Like we don't have to get into like t-tests and like regression analysis and all that stuff. Like just showing averages with some of the stuff we're doing is incredibly important. And it might not be the sexy stuff that we like to talk about in terms of the data science stuff, but first of all, the first thing is the data we're collecting good data? Is kind of where I'm really at my job. I've been here for 3 months, and that's kind of my goal right now, is just to like being able to break apart the problems, make sure I have context of the issues to say, hey, why does this data say what it does? Then I can go to the people that we support and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Can you give me like a reason why this is happening? Then they give me the reasoning, and then I can present it up to my leadership, and then go from there. So that's kind of what I'm doing, and then kind of like in charge of vetting all the technology. So talking about wearables and like meeting with different companies about like what they can do for us, et cetera, stuff like that. Yeah, that's kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis, support the units that I support.
No, I think that's, even if you didn't like, obviously like taking it slower right now, and actually figuring out exactly what you want to do with the data, and actually get more technology in, and be very deliberate with that stuff. Like it seems like it serves a great purpose, even though those are roadblocks, I'm sure, that you want to get solved quicker. But it seems like that within that time, you're able to get more information. You're able to kind of look at the data. And the most important thing, you're able to like decipher it and bring that data to like the higher ups, who are actually going to be the ones that get to manipulate what goes on, and you can educate them on, hey, this is what we're finding, so that they kind of understand exactly what you're doing. You're not trying to go in and change anything, really. It seems like you're more so going in to educate them on, this is what's happening when you do X. Like these are the repercussions, like this is the stress that is induced when you do this. This is the recovery of what your soldiers feel after doing Y. Does that make sense? Is that kind of what it looks like right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, so talk about this. I don't know, obviously, like in a different type of situation, and you could talk about it from past scenarios where you've been in a tactical profession, or even working at EXOS and everything. How's the relationship been with maybe some of the people that are actually strength coaches, or some of the athletic trainers, or other preparation or rehab specialists? How do you work together pretty well in the tactical setting, or does it kind of vary from unit to unit, or location and bases, or even military branches? Because I know you've been in different ones too.
Yeah. So I honestly, with strength coaches, it's easy because I was a strength coach. So it's like I generally can go in and like develop relationships with those guys like super easily. And I've been doing I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think I'm doing a good job here doing that. But also I can speak to dietitians, like my bachelor's in dietetics, so I feel like I do a good job creating relationships with those people. That's huge. Like that is like literally the biggest thing you do. If you're, let's say you're at a leadership level, like you can't just sit up there in your ivory tower. Like you need to get down and you need to get to training. You need to see what they're doing. And that's kind of what I've been up to is like, hey, getting down to the units and saying, hey, like, what problems are you having? How can I help? How can I support you? It's literally just like a customer service role. As a data scientist, you're a customer service role. Like, find out what people want because you making stuff on your own and like presenting it to them, they might be like, I don't care. It's like really get their opinion and get what they want to get out of the information because they're the ones that are going to be changing the training. If we're in a professional setting, like the coaches are going to be the ones that are going to change the they're going to change the training. So you just presenting them with a bunch of data might be helpful, but it also gets a lot of buy-in if you create those relationships and ask them what they want, et cetera. It's the same thing with the military. Like just again, developing those relationships with everybody, just being a good person, is being a nice person around people is huge. If you like do your best to not have a bad interaction with somebody because they might shut you down forever, depending on the person. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of what I'm focused on now. But yeah, the strength coaches, ATs, it's funny, like working in college sports, I never met an AT that was like happy. Like I feel for them because they're like always like working their butts off. But in the tactical setting, like what's just great about it is we generally work 40 hours a week. So if you want to work 40 hours a week, join tactical because your quality of life will go up a ton, and you also probably get paid more. So, but yeah, working with ATs, they're always pretty cool. Right now, I haven't really talked to any ATs. Only been here 3 months. More PTs. There's not a lot of ATs. More PTs, OTs, psychologists, dietitians, strength coaches, chaplains. So from the spiritual side, so that's kind of the people that I only talk to.
Definitely a lot of resources, a lot of people that are holistically trying to help just the soldier, help the unit. That's a lot. That's cool though, because you do have so much experience and you're able to kind of be the person that like brings all that together. But at the same time, even though like you're familiar with like the nutrition side, like you have experience as a strength coach, like now you're in this data scientist role, like everything is about like human, like tactical performance, and it's about putting the soldiers first. So that's cool because you'll often see people that are in some of those like data scientist roles or even like in a collegiate setting that's working like the more clinical based and like research trials. They want to test what they want to test and they want to kind of skew the data. Not all of them, but a lot of them want to answer a question that doesn't really help what's happening, like the performance on the field, or for a tactical setting, like actually help them like train properly, stay healthy, like recover better, like actually get ready for like workups and deployments and things of that nature. So it's awesome that you go and you actually asking the people that are going to directly impact the training and then say, hey, how can I help you guys? Like, what do you want to see? Most of them probably have no idea. Like we can preach that sleep is important, but if you can actually bring them like hard facts and they're like, hey, we want to figure out how we can help the soldiers like recover better, like through sleep. And you can actually go back and now you have something to run with and actually work on that stuff and present it. It's probably going to pay dividends way at the like later on because you're answering the questions that they're specifically asking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And all the strength coaches out there, dietitians, all human performance professionals, like please care about sleep. Like you want to see performance increases, have somebody get sleep. Like, and I'm actually gonna start writing articles and start putting out articles. I don't want to say through who yet, but hopefully we'll be able to get that out to people so they can look at it from a performance mindset. But yeah, like I know it's sometimes we only care about the X's and O's and the strength conditioning stuff and what people are putting in their bodies. But literally, if we want to make a huge change, like teach you about sleep and try to change those behaviors because you want to see performance increases, and you will see that if you start teaching people about sleep. So
yeah, no doubt. That's a huge thing that actually is going to help pretty much everybody. But it's cool too. You talked about like actually going to the field and seeing what they're doing, like actually in their environment and talking to some of the commanding officers, talking to some of the NCOs that actually are going to be dictating what type of training is, how training is going to be handled, what they're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Like that's probably the best way to actually get a clear picture of how to train them and how to actually interpret what data is actually going to be beneficial. What from your lens, like as a former strength coach and now as a data scientist, what in general, what would you say besides like sleep as a recovery thing? What are some of like the training goals like for a typical soldier? Like what is super important for them to be successful?
So, I mean, obviously, since you're an Army officer, ACFT is something that they got to train for and they have to pass. And then obviously, the conventional Army has theirs, and then when we get into like special operations stuff, they kind of have some extra stuff they do. But yeah, that's kind of how they're gauging stuff in the military in terms of physical preparation. But then you're also looking at psychological. I mean, you're looking at like a holistic standpoint of not just like the strength stuff, but like psychological, cognitive, nutritional, like everything is kind of all coming into play. So hopefully I answered your question. But
No, it does. Yeah. There's a lot of competing things that end up going into training for them. So it's great that there's resources for it, and it's a difficult thing to be able to try to mash all those things together. So it's cool to see like data science and some of this human performance side actually get involved a little bit more. And because obviously, like if professional sports are going to do it and they're going to be trying to be perfecting like what millions of dollars end up going into training an athlete for the field, it should be done on the tactical side. It should be done with the military. It's probably so new into the profession that it's difficult what actually to do. And obviously, like you spoke to it too, like getting some of the tech or it's not as easy as a professional team just going out and buying catapult and going out and buying like every single force plate you want. There's a different process that goes into it on the military side, which I know you're in the thick of dealing with right now.
yeah, it's definitely a different animal. And one thing I want to say about it is like everybody thinks that the military is like you tell somebody to do it and they do it. That's not the case anymore. Like it's not like that. It's if you go to like the Rangers, that's probably still the case. So like maybe the Marines, but when they get older and become NCOs and old, and let's say E7s, E8s, E6, even E6s, like you have to get their buy-in, and they've already been. That's the hard part about the military is they've already been training the way they've been doing their whole life without any kind of help, whether that be strength conditioning, nutrition help, psychological help. Like they've already made it through without it. So having them change those behaviors and those habits to actually get help is really, really hard. And then also everybody wants to do their own thing. So all these H2F coaches are having to like get these people, like it's not mandatory these people train with them. So they have to get buy-in to get people to come and see them. And that's kind of how it is across the board in the military, unless you're a student. So if you're at the special warfare candidate course, like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But in the Army, like unless you're a student, you're not going to be. You can basically do whatever you want. And then it's the coach's job to kind of, and the nutritionist's job and the psychologist's job to get buy-in so people get help.
Right. Yeah. Outside of like actually going to some of those workups and seeing their training, and I don't know how like often you have some of these sit down conversations with about some of the data that you're collecting or these questions. Like I don't know how formal it is. What are some other ways that now you have to maybe go in and try to build some of that buy-in with the people that you're directly having these conversations with? Is it a little bit similar to what it was like when you were in like college or in the like working with baseball athletes of the private sector? Like you're just trying to be there at all times. You're trying to like just show faith, like speak their language. Are there things like that that kind of translate over when it comes to building buy-in in a tactical setting?
Yeah, it's really just like I'm always talking to people. I'm always going somewhere and jumping into a meeting or just like going to talk to somebody and just see how they're doing. So like, for instance, at my last job, we were using sleep wearables, and I would just literally go to the NCOs and the officers and just be like, "Hey, man, how's your sleep going?" Like, because I was kind of in charge of that aspect of it, and even though I was a psychologist and kind of like the sleep guy there, I was still like, just develop those relationships, ask them how everything's going, and then like sometimes people would come to me and say, "Hey, do you have any advice how I can improve my sleep?" That's kind of like what I'm doing or trying to do at my current position is just like going around and saying, "Hey, like, how's everything going? Like, can you give me feedback? Like, what education would you like to see?" And then I can push that up to my sleep program manager, and then we can start. And he can start making education, and then I can kind of sometimes give my 2 cents. But yeah, that's kind of where. That's kind of like how I would answer that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. It's kind of the same sort of beast that you have to like do. It's really just putting in personal time. It's having those one-on-one conversations. It's kind of finding common ground with everybody. It's the same as talking to an athlete. And I think more and more that you're in like the tactical setting, like you're working with those guys, you realize that there's not too much, there's more commonality between you two than there are differences. And it seems like the same way in the college sector too. As soon as you find some common ground, it's easy to have those personal conversations, and that's what really going to drive the buy-in. And then it leads to some more deep conversations. It kind of leads to, okay, well now how do we utilize me a little bit more and my role to kind of facilitate the soldiers, which is completely different, like in the college setting where it's like, well, you're kind of mandated, you have to use us, like you have to. It's definitely, it takes a little bit more work on your part, I'm sure, but it probably pays its weight like in gold, and it's a lot more satisfying when they actually come in more often to utilize what your expertise is.
Yeah, no, it's a really good feeling. I mean, sometimes and I don't want to speak for all strength coaches, but if I was a strength coach in the technical setting, which I've been around them for the past 4 years, once you get buy-in from somebody and you kind of develop that relationship, then people are going to automatically keep coming to you forever. Even if like maybe they're not with you anymore, they're still going to reach out to you, and you've developed that relationship, you've helped them, and then kind of like built their foundation, and then like hopefully let them flourish on their own. And I think that's kind of where we always want to go is like teaching somebody, and then hopefully like it's like teaching somebody how to fish instead of just giving them a fish, so they can like learn and like hopefully provide for themselves and live a healthy lifestyle, whether that be increasing performance or just being healthy. That's kind of what we live for, and I think you can definitely understand that, and probably most of your viewers can understand that as well.
Definitely. Hey, so with same kind of concept, talking about building that buy-in, it's a little bit different in the military setting, like especially if you haven't served, even though you've been around them, you'll still get some of those old school guys that are like, you just don't understand, like, or you can't go on some of those missions, you can't go in the field for everything, like you're not going to be privy maybe to some of those conversations, or just have the same kind of wear and tear that they're going to have after years of service and maybe having deployments under their belt or being in combat, different things of that nature. Trying to find some commonality, like have you been able to do that, like just maybe training around the guys or being able to relate to them with like, hey, well, I've done bodybuilding, I've played sports in the past, like I've done jujitsu, like I still train like physically like hard, and I still work on a daily basis. Has that been something too that kind of you can sneak into it, or do they see you train or things along that nature that kind of open the door for more conversations about like sleep and recovery and like the things that you can offer like from the data side?
Yeah, so really like just having understanding of physiology kind of trumps like all the experience that they have. But yeah, you do get where people are like you don't know like what I've been through. And I've never had anybody tell me that personally, but I mean I know it's a thing, and especially if they don't say it, they might think it. But for me, it's just like being able to kind of break down the physiology aspect and into a way people can understand, and just kind of like feeding it like every once in a while, just kind of give them little tidbits of like how they can improve. But I mean, like I want to beat a dead horse, but it's just literally just developing the relationships with people and showing them that you care. And everybody knows that. Everybody's heard nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care is like it's totally true. And then just like sometimes I walk by the hall, I walked in the hall from somebody and they like won't acknowledge me. But once I engage, I'll just engage them anyways. I'm like, hey, how's everything going? Like, do you need anything that I can help with? And then that kind of starts a conversation. You never get like, oh, I'm good, and then they just keep walking. Like they almost always stop and like have that conversation with you, and you've obviously built that relationship even stronger. But yeah.
No, that's great. It's still a personal job. No matter if you're stuck behind a computer crunching numbers on some days more than you are able to actually get out and see what's going on, like you were always on the floor as a coach. It's great to see that there's still like such a big personal connection to it, and you're not so far removed from what is actually like the performance side of it, like the tactical side. Like you're not so far removed that you don't understand what it is, and it's just objective numbers. Like it's great that there's still a subjective side to it, not only from like what you're doing that's pertinent to what they want to find out, but that you can have those personal conversations with them too, and kind of dig a little bit deeper before you start showing them the science behind what's going on. Because I think that's probably where it seals the fact that you understand what you're talking about. When you can open them up and engage them, and then they have a question about something, you can answer it, and then you can kind of just seal it now with, well, here's the facts because this is what the data says too.
Yeah. And going back to what you're saying, it kind of add on your question or add on to the answer. What I was saying was that like, yeah, I do still train. I do still train around them. I think that's definitely something that gives people like more buy into what you want them to do. Because they do see that you care and that you're taking care of yourself. Sometimes they'll have questions. Like in my last job, I had two operators that I was working with, and I was like the tech guy. So, but I wore my EXOS shirt one time. They're like, "Oh, you worked at EXOS," and they were both like competitive shooters, like the running gun stuff. And like, will you do some speed and agility with stuff with me? And I was like, absolutely. So like every day for like an hour, we would go into the gym and we do speed and agility work together. And that's just kind of how I developed a relationship with those guys. And now Chris is I don't want to say his last name, but he's probably top 10 in the United States in pistol. But he's an animal, and it's just like stuff like that. Just being willing to like take time out of your day to help somebody kind of really helps them. But then also just like showing them that you still train and you still try to get after it. It's important.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool to see. Hey, you talked about it too, about like obviously like sleep being a big thing that not only you are, but pretty much everyone in any sort of like sports performance setting in the military setting it's a misconception that like, yeah, sleep is for the weak. Have there been anything else like tendencies like from the military, like you've been around it for like 4 years plus now? Is there any like old school mentality or things that are starting to like kind of trickle away or slowly start to die? Like obviously, like we know caffeine consumption, like dip, tobacco, like they're 18-year-old kids and they're put in high stress situations. Like they're doing a very hard, like difficult job all the time. Like you're not going to be able to kill all that in one fail swoop. But is there anything else that like you guys are trying to address, or you see like maybe the broad tactical community is really trying to put a little bit more emphasis on, that in the past maybe was kind of just pushed to the side in terms of like performance?
Yeah, it's not something that I've seen like directly talked about. But alcohol consumption is something that, especially when people are having some hard times. I mean, the military is not an easy job, regardless of what position you have. So that self medication with alcohol is something that we definitely people like kind of stay away from. Not that having a couple of beers with your buddies is completely fine, but using it to self medicate is kind of like the issue that we have seen. And also just like, we can also take that and say, hey, like giving them a wearable that can measure like sleep and HRV and stuff like that, and then showing them the objective information about how that alcohol is affecting their body. and then hopefully seeing those behavioral changes where, hey man, I don't want my score to be low, so I'm not gonna drink as much. But that's another thing. And then with these 18-year-old kids, like sometimes it's just a learning thing. Like they have to like go through it, and then the only thing we can do is just educate. Like that is like literally the biggest thing we have to do as coaches, as human performance professionals, is just educate these guys, and then obviously develop the relationship first and then educate. That is how we're going to see changes. If we don't do, which hopefully we develop the relationship first, then it's just going to be business as usual. So that's just kind of what we got to do. Just keep educating. And then hopefully we have some objective measure to see if the education is helping.
So in terms of like education, what have you done like in the past, and what are you hoping to kind of do, just maybe broad sense again, like with the military, like in terms of actually trying to educate like these soldiers, maybe not specifically the information that you're doing, but like, is it like handouts? Is it like informational stuff? Does it come directly from you and strength coaches or athletic trainers, or does it come from like active duty, like military personnel? Like, are you kind of giving them the information so it's trickled down from the chain of command, or is it like, are you guys tag teaming them up at some point? How have you guys kind of tried to educate them besides those one-on-one conversations, and are you trying to change that for the future?
So my previous job, I had a very fortunate. I was working with students, so like students in the Air Force Special Warfare, and so like I would have like 150, 200 guys in the room at once, and I would we talked about sleep, we talked about different types of recovery, talk about what technology means, etc. So that was easy. It was definitely death by PowerPoint, unfortunately, which is not the best way. But I would say individual encounters are way better. But when you're working with 200 students, it's really hard to get, and they're only there for 7 weeks. It's really hard to get those individual conversations going when there's so many of them. But yeah, that's something that kind of I've done. I've been very fortunate. So I would teach like 3 classes about either tech or sleep in each 7-week course that we had with the Air Force students. And then not so much flyers. I feel like flyers are, especially when you hand them out, they get thrown away like right away. But really, like we had the opportunity to have like them have a bunch of technology, so they were actually like, if they wanted to look at it, they could go onto their device and look at whether they look at their HRV or looking at different metrics or sleep or something like that. They could see those changes, and then if they have questions, they could always come ask. Again, like the course I was in was a super intense course to prepare them for assessment and selection, so they didn't really have a lot of time to come ask those questions. But I would have students come to me and say, hey, I tried this. I tried what you taught me about sleep. Like, big change. I feel so much better now. So stuff like that, just talking to them and then trying to educate them and give them a chance to ask questions. And normally when we'd be in the class, we'd have 20, 30 people ask questions. And some of them were is like, why don't we use wrist-based compared to like another type of based wearable? And we break down like what the differences are, stuff like that. Because we know like Whoop is like a super popular thing amongst the military. Whether that be good or bad, I don't want to talk crap about technology or like the Oura Ring or like anything like. It's just information that we can use. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with what I've done right now. It's more of a bigger picture type of thing, and then getting with like the person that like our sleep program manager, do nutrition, and say, hey, this is where I think the issue is. Can we help them? So currently I'm working with 3 like cognitive performance specialists, and so we are trying to figure out, and I'm trying to get their information because I don't have a cognitive performance specialist where I'm at. So we're trying to work together to develop like a sleep curriculum, like a sleep education curriculum. So that's kind of where I don't know how that's going to go yet, but I know I have an idea of kind of how I want it to go. But again, they're going to be the experts since I'm the data scientist.
And that's cool that you're actually you're combining forces and trying to put something together that is cumulative and kind of putting your heads together with all the performance professionals to create those sort of things. And yeah, it's hard when you have that many people, or you're in a school type setting, like getting ready for a selection, or you're getting ready for like, you just know there's a definitive timeline where they're going to be out to do anything much more than just a classroom setting and like PowerPoints and everything. But it's good that there at least is engagement. And even if you're just reaching one person, or they take one piece of information and they go out and try it and use it, and then find out it's not for them. I mean, that's better than what they were doing, which was nothing probably before, and or at least it makes them think about what's going on. It's a hard concept too. I wanted to ask you this because from outside perspective, looking at a lot of tactical jobs, and we know that contracts in them, they come and go pretty quickly, and it might be fulfilled from a different organization, going back to the same exact unit. I mean, you yourself, you bounced around from a bunch of different jobs too, and whether it be career advancement, location, or maybe just a contract not getting renewed, stuff like that. It's almost just as difficult on the education side when you see someone only for 7 weeks. Like, how do you think? I know this is a huge question. It's probably something that can't really be solved right now, but what in your opinion, what would be a good way maybe to find ways to continue building on that same education, like after those 7 weeks? Obviously, like, you're getting like a collection. When I was at OCS, we had people from Japan, Germany, Okinawa, like everybody was coming together all across the country just to go to 12 weeks of like officer candidate school. And then they were all getting shoved back out in that timeline. And you're probably the same way with like working with the Air Force Special Operations, and like them coming to for like 1 7 week course. But how do you make it so that it's not just a learn it once, this one PowerPoint, here's my contact information, you'll probably never reach out because you've got more pressing things? Like, what do we do to like continue the conversation or continue that education?
So it's hard. It's really, really hard. I mean, I know that's probably not the answer people want to hear, but the thing is, if you're not in a leadership position, even if you are, like, dictating what they're going to do in the rest of the pipeline is really, really hard, because you have other professionals. Every professional wants to do what they want to do. They like, if they get told what to do, then they're generally going to fight back. So really, it's just starting them at the basics, and then when they go to like their schoolhouse or wherever they're going, hopefully they have somebody, or when they go to like the actual operational side, they have somebody there that can keep hammering that education piece. But all you really can do is kind of where you're at. Like, you try to get these guys good where they're at, and then especially if you're not in a leadership position, then you just kind of like got to hope for the best, and it's very unfortunate. If I was in a leadership position, I would be definitely hammering on this stuff all the way through, but not right now. So that's something that hopefully the Air Force and the Army can use, and keep trying to hammer that, instead of just like one location. You give them information like you're saying, and just like let them go, and then they never hear it again, or they probably forgot 95% of what you talked about. They probably remembered 5% of it. So hopefully that 5% is something that's really impactful, and hopefully changes the way they approach recovery or performance, or et cetera.
Yeah, it's definitely, it shouldn't be disconcerting. It sucks that that's kind of what the case ends up being, and it has to just get higher up the chain of command for anything to really happen. But hopefully some of these like conversations and some of these discussions like start sparking more conversations and higher leadership, and they start realizing like, hey, this is a program that we should like really grasp onto and start branching out more, or this should be involved in like more often than just once for a 7 week school cycle. It just, we know it takes time, but it just takes one spark from someone with a few stars to actually get the conversation going a little bit more. It's just everybody at the bottom's got to just keep chipping away, and hopefully something one day will catch fire, and it'll spark some big changes going forward.
Yeah, I think people just got to remember that, like, if you're at like the lowest level and you get told what to do, I get that you don't want to, like, people want to do their own thing, but just know there's a bigger picture up there, and it's what's helped me is like being kind of both places has allowed me to like understand that nobody really has ill intent from a like a leadership standpoint to like making a decision. It's always a good intent. And it might, but the problem is it might be perceived as ill intent at the bottom. So hopefully, like as we keep moving on as humanity, or as we just get as human performance specialists, human performance professionals, that we just learn that we're all there to help these people, and it doesn't need to be like my way is better than your way, or I know more than you, or what I'm doing is better. It's, hey, like how can we come together and then work on that? And I think that comes from leadership too. Like leadership needs to be willing to go down and to explain their reasoning besides things, instead of sitting up in an ivory tower and just like disseminating without giving the actual context of why this is happening, or show, or like not just putting their face out there and just showing them that they care.
Yeah, it's a great point. Hey, so when it comes to like trying to advance like your kind of own education, like continuing education, or just sharpen the sword in general, what are some of like the resources or like you kind of lean on, or coaches you kind of follow that really just kind of bring you up to speed on what's going on, or maybe even people like in the tactical setting that have really kind of forged a path for you that you like use as a resource nowadays?
Yeah, there's a few. So I'm starting name dropping again. So Andrew Thompson is a researcher with TradeDoc, and this dude's an animal. He's super smart dude. He spoke at the TSAC this last year. That dude gets down and dirty with the people that he works with, rucking everything. He's an awesome dude. He's kind of like put me on the path for data science. He's amazing. I think I would just reach out to him on LinkedIn. Really good dude. John Mata, or we call him JD. He is the exercise physiologist for Air Force Special Warfare. He's amazing. Dude is gonna be something super special. I would just, if you want to talk to him again, reach out to him on LinkedIn. I don't think he has Twitter, and I don't want to get his IG because that's more of a personal IG. But those two are some people that are really special to me, and some people that I really look up to. So that's kind of who I go to.
Awesome. No, that was super helpful, because obviously they're going to pave the way, and if they're in those elevated positions too, it's only going to be better when people get into like your spot, or start getting into the tactical strength conditioning or athletic training and those rehab roles too, to have someone that is up like at the TRADOC level or at the special warfare level, because we know when you get that high, it starts to trickle down to conventional army and conventional forces a lot more so than trying to build it from the bottom up. That usually takes forever, and it really is like like one small spark and a 1 in a million chance for that to actually get passed down everywhere. For anybody that else has that like questions about like what to do like in the strength conditioning profession, because you've taken a different path, you've been a little bit of everything, and now like you're a little bit more removed from coaching, even though you have that experience to rely upon. For anybody that wants to like explore some of these opportunities, like how can they find out more information, maybe on like the data science side, or is it just harder to get a hold of it unless you know someone specifically involved in the tactical side, like for a job like yourself?
Dude, you really just got to reach out to people. Like people got to put themselves out there, and some people say networking is like a bad word, but network with people and build those relationships. So for me, going back to like kind of some good ways to like learn is like, I would recommend Data Camp. It's something, everything is on there. If you want to learn Python, R, Power BI, Excel, learn actual like take data science courses. It's and I don't get paid by them. I use them personally. I think they're awesome. I think it's like $300 a year, and then sometimes they have sales for $150 a year for a subscription. But really good if you want to get into the data science stuff. Also, I haven't done it yet, but the Google Analytics course is something that I've had a couple friends get, and they said it was really good for them. That's something I would go with. But what else? Yeah, that's kind of how I'm kind of sharpening the saw right now, is just learning data science. I honestly, I don't really dive into physiology or like a lot of stuff anymore, or nutrition. I just kind of rely on my experiences and my past education. Um, the way I would approach, if you want to get into data science, would be to reach out to somebody like Andrew. Again, Andrew Thompson. He's somebody that has like really helped me kind of build, like kind of carve my path. And not that I'm a great data scientist yet. I've only been doing it for about 4 months. But just like reach out to him, or who else would I would reach out to for data science? Yeah, I don't want to give the names of the people that I actually work with, but if you want to learn about like kind of what my path, you can always reach out to me, and then I'm sure I'll end up giving my stuff, my social media stuff, and my email. But I'll always help people. I think paying it forward is something that's super important, and I really don't want to get too much of the details of like all the stuff that I've done, because it's kind of can take forever. But reach out to me, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's those are great resources, people to kind of talk to. So it's interesting to kind of hear that path, obviously, like still being on the strength coach side and understand like what there is to offer. Like obviously, like even from university to university, people do it different. Even like different sports technologies, people can interpret the data differently, use it for different things. But it's cool to see what your path looks like, taking it from where you started to now at this point. And it's awesome because you've been able to rely on all that information, and you don't really need to dive into exercise physiology and nutrition that much right now, because you have all those other people that are specifically tasked to do it, that you can rely on them, but you can still easily go into those conversations based off your past experience and knowledge, rather than not even be able to speak their language and bridge the gap between them. But because you've done so many different things, like I'm sure it makes those conversations easy. So it's cool to be in the position you are in, and like it's no small feat that you got there, from everything that you've been able to do before. And even if you don't know data science that well right now, I'm sure you're going to pick it up pretty quick.
Yeah, no, I'm still working on it. I mean, like learning it. The data science stuff is not hard, but the programming is like not for the faint-hearted. If you want to learn R or Python, like you're going to go through the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you're like, you've learned your first like couple lines of code, and you're like, I know everything, and then you're like realize that you literally know nothing. And I think somebody posted the other day on LinkedIn, it was amazing. It was like I know everything, and then it was like valley, and then it was like immediately valley of despair for like a year, and then you kind of go back into like, oh, I'm actually kind of like understanding it now. Because I've been working with like a programming language called R for the past almost a year now, and I still know nothing compared to like the data scientist too that I work with, who is just like, he knows like 6 different languages, and it's just like it's super genius. Like he should be working for Google and making like 500K a year. But yeah, that's it's just something that if you want to get into programming languages, like it's definitely worth it, but it's not going to be easy. It's definitely something that takes a lot of time and takes a lot of patience.
No, it's a good thing he's on the military side versus Google. Sometimes we need more smart people like you and him working with America's military versus just working for some of those big organizations. Those are going to survive on their own a little bit. We need good coaches and good data analysts with the military.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Hey, like any good training session, we end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and maybe overtime at the end. So you can go rapid fire with these, or you could take your time on any of them. But you ready?
Yep. Let's do it.
All right. First one I got for you: biggest influence in strength and conditioning or data science for you, and favorite athlete growing up.
Okay. Strength and conditioning. Two of my biggest influences. I can't say one or the other. I have to say both Callie Williams and Rachel Balkovec were my biggest influences coming up in strength and conditioning. I don't talk to them as much as I used to, but they carved my path as a strength coach. And Callie's not a strength coach anymore. Obviously, Rachel's with the Yankees. So those are people that I've always looked up to, and they've made a big impact on my life. And then favorite athlete, I'm gonna get made fun of about this, but Robin Ventura, he was a baseball player for Oklahoma State, and then went on to the majors, worked for the White Sox. He ended up getting beat up by Nolan Ryan, unfortunately. So if you've ever watched Nolan Ryan beat up a dude, it was Robin Ventura. But he was one of my childhood sports heroes. I loved him, and that's who my favorite athlete is.
All right. Hey, so when you're not crunching numbers, you're not coaching or you're not training, what are you doing as hobbies nowadays?
So big thing I'm doing now is writing articles. I haven't put anything out yet. I'm writing like blog series about sleep education. So changing behavior, basics of sleep, et cetera, like that. Hopefully that'll be coming out in the next couple of months. I like playing video games, and then I have a motorcycle, KTM 890 Duke R. If anybody knows what that is, it's like a track bike. But it's something that I really enjoy is riding that. Hopefully get to the track again soon. But yeah, that's kind of like what I do outside of crunching the numbers.
All righty. Hey, so if you weren't doing what you're doing right now, and strength coaching is not an option either, what would you be doing as a career if you could do it all again?
Man, I'd probably go to the military. I think I would go in, maybe enlist first and then commission as an officer, because that is some really cool stuff that you can do. I get that it can be like monotonous sometimes, and but setting yourself up for life is 100% amazing. Like if you can retire with 25 years as an officer, you're making 50% of your paycheck. Let's say you retire as a lieutenant colonel in the Army, you're making 70, 80K the rest of your life. And that's because that's 50% of your paycheck. So after you retire, so just like setting yourself up, that's probably something I would have done. Definitely.
All righty. Hey, so if you're setting it up an ideal training day for yourself, what music is on the stereo? Like what's playing through the speakers, and what's the best post-training meal look like?
All right. So definitely metalcore all day. So As I Lay Dying, Bury Tomorrow, Spirit Box, sometimes some sad boy stuff. Like I'm going to see Dayseeker and Silverstein tomorrow, actually. But that's kind of what I'm jamming out to.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. So really like metalcore, metal, stuff like that. And then what was the second part?
Best post-training meal.
Best post-training meal. Carbs and protein. So generally my post-training meals are going to be just straight, either a shake, or they're going to be, I guess you could say best post-workout meal. Probably sushi for me. That's like any type of meal would be the best would be sushi.
Yeah, that checks off everything. No, that's cool. No, I'm going to see Chelsea Grin in May.
Okay.
And there's a few others. There's a few others that are coming down to Florida. So they don't post very well for anybody. So I have to go sneak in and figure out what small venue they're playing at, and then get thrown into like a 20-year-old mosh pit.
Oh man, I can't do that anymore.
I don't know if I want to anymore.
Oh my God. When I was a kid, I walked into a mosh pit. I was like 19, immediately got chopped in the throat, and then I just like crawled my way out. So mosh pits are definitely not my thing. Especially people like dance fighting now, just like throwing punches everywhere. That's just not what I want to be part of.
It's a wild thing to watch for sure. And it's crazy to watch. Yeah, I don't want to be part of it. I just want to go to the show. Hey, so last one I got for you for overtime. What is your favorite part about your current job, like working as a data analyst, like human performance lead specialist? Like, what is your favorite part of that?
My favorite part is breaking down silos. So as a data scientist, that is your job. Your job is to congregate all the data and to combine all of it together, and then presenting out to a staff so everybody can understand, like, hey, this is what strength conditioning is doing. This is what nutrition is doing. This is how it can all come together so we can make a bigger impact, where normally it's everybody in their silos, which is what's great about professional sports, is like everybody's trying to work on coming together and having it be a holistic approach to training rather than, oh, I'm just going to do the strength conditioning stuff. I don't care about anything else. Like everybody, it's like, for instance, when we talk about sleep, If the strength coaches talk about sleep, if the dietitians talk about how nutrition can help sleep, if the psychologists talk about how you can change your behavior for sleep, then somebody's going to change their behaviors that they keep hearing from everybody. Because they might have the best relationship with the strength coach, and they might be scared of a psychologist. So if we all can come together and work together, then we can make huge impacts.
I love that. That's great. You hit the nail on the head for anybody in any job that deals with performance, deals with athletes. Like everybody's it's a personal thing. So everybody's gonna congregate to someone that they relate to or they have some sort of special relationship with. And if we're all kind of speaking the same sort of topic, but speaking in our own terms, someone's going to gravitate them, and no one should care who gets the credit or who that athlete gravitates to the most. As long as the message and the purpose is getting to them, that's awesome. That's great, man. Hey, so for anybody that's got any follow-up questions, obviously you said you're willing to reach out and kind of bridge the gap and kind of talk about how your inception into this world got to be and your career path. So for anybody who wants to follow along or ask follow-up questions for you, where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on IG. My handle is data_directed. And then I would say just reach out to me on LinkedIn would probably be the easiest way. Just Jacob Behara on LinkedIn. And then my email is jacob, jacob.b as in bear, ehara@gmail.com.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, it was great catching up with you again. I know, like we said, we lost contact, and it was great. Like LinkedIn's a perfect way to find you too. So I can attest to that. And we've done so much stuff in the time that we've been gone. And so it's really cool to see like how your career and my career have gone different ways, but we've been able to connect and get back to this. So man, I appreciate you coming on today. It's been awesome.
Yeah, we're definitely going to stay in contact a lot more. We're not going to lose the relationship now. So thanks, Nick, for having me on. And I appreciate being a part of this. Thank you so much.
Of course, man. No doubt.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.